You mentioned about the environment is a very challenging place in which to work. Our experience is that across the industry, people are undergoing enormous pressures to achieve the time, cost, quality and safety goals, apart from client relationships and staff morale. Are there some things that you feel we could do to support people better so that A, they're able to achieve what they need to achieve more effectively and be able to enjoy it in the process? Difficult question, I know.
You could teach them Buddhism. And I've said that at conferences because I don't have any easy fix for a very complicated situation with a lot of pressures and a lot of behavioural aspects to it, and a lot of those behaviours are entrenched and they're deeply held, and everyone now knows what's acceptable. We all read the papers. A lot of these people go home and they deal with a different environment at home or socially, and anti-bullying laws. There's a lot of things that are no longer acceptable that they were 30 or 40 years ago. But I think the industry is entrenched. One of the problems is a lot of the people at the top of the industry have got to the top by behaving like this. So they actually pick people like them and they tacitly encourage it as well. And it's viewed as being tough and strong and hard and all the things that are admired in the industry. So it would take some pretty significant changes to move that along, or some sort of catastrophe.
So Sean, we were talking about the industry at large. If we look onto it specifically, have you been able to come up with what you believe are some effective ways in which you can support your staff to do what they need to do?
It's a complicated question, Rosemary. If I look back at what I do when I have the ability to set up the environment, which I've managed to do a number of times in my career, it becomes a test of leadership, and it becomes a test of character, and it becomes a test of integrity, and it does really become a test of ego or lack of ego. So I think leading any major project is a reasonably thorough interrogation of you as a person, and you should be thinking about why you're doing it and what's driving you and what success looks like to you and what you value. So there's a lot of complicated questions I think you need to be asking yourself before you find yourself in a role where you can affect the day-to-day environment of a lot of people. And I know that the first few major leadership roles I had, I found them intensely challenging to me personally, because I really had to work out why I was doing it. And the first couple, I was not doing it for the right reasons, and I ended up in a place I didn't want to be personally. And so, as with any sort of growth, there needs to be some sort of event that forces you to look back at why you're doing things. And I think a lot of people would say that really good leaders, they do it without any ego. And that takes quite a lot to park your ego, particularly in an industry like this. And you need to probably be at a certain point in your career where you're happy to do it. But I know now when I set up a program, it feels reasonably straightforward to do, because there's almost a bunch of rules. If you want to set up a high-performing team, there's a bunch of rules. They're really easy to say, but they're actually really hard to make real, because as soon as you tell the team this is how we're going to work, they will study you with intense scrutiny. I described it to someone as being nailed to the wall, because and they want to see whether the rules are real. And the best way they can do that is by watching the leader. And their expectations of your behaviour are much higher than their own, and I have come to understand why. It's a little bit sort of like parenting. And so you actually have to behave better than your real self, in my view, when you're in a leadership role. You have to have higher standards of integrity and behaviour, so that you can then project the rules you want onto your team, and for them to see them and accept that they're going to be enforced. And that's a really tiring process for a leader to do that. And you've really got to want to do it for a bunch of reasons that may or may not be related to the business result. You've actually got to believe this is the right way to have people engage with each other in their workplace. And that's why I made the somewhat flippant comment about Buddhism. You've actually got to think about what is it you're doing and is important to you, and do you really care whether you impact on other people or whatever. And so, I mean, I'm rambling along here, but it's a long set of things you have to work out. And then the solution, when you get it, looks very simple. Because everyone's behaving, everyone's working as a team, there's no crazy egos, there's very low levels of blame, there's very high levels of trust. And the challenge, though, is to have a team like that still aspirational. You can have a team that has very low levels of blame and very high levels of trust, and they work as a team, but if you don't watch it, they're just like a commune. Everyone's really comfortable, but not a lot's happening. The challenge is to put a little piece of grit in the shoe.
Stretch.
Yeah, because that straight away puts people under tension.
Yeah.
And when you do that, the behaviours get challenged. And that's when the need to have trust. Because even though I'm challenging you, Rosemary, and saying I think that design you've just done could be done better, if you don't trust me, you'll defend yourself because you'll feel like it's a personal attack. So it takes quite high levels of trust to have a high-performing team operating. And I've only learnt that along the way because I've been lucky enough to see some exceptional teams. And all the exceptional projects I've been involved in have not got there in a linear, straight line way. They've all had major creation events which were very draining on everyone. But the only way you keep that team together is by having those sorts of behaviours. And that's when the team gets to make something great.
Sean, thank you for your contribution today. It's been amazing to hear about what you've been through and to be able to share that with people in the industry, because the more we can do this, the more we can hopefully make it better.
Well, I think what you're doing is amazing as well, because if more and more of the industry takes just a little bit of leadership and we all try and get our head above the day-to-day, and we all take risks about contributing to the larger conversation, if we can get that going, the industry will move forward. But it requires people like yourselves to decide to step up and commit time and resource into something that is not going to give you an immediate short-term benefit, which is what the industry is addicted to.
Yeah.
So thank you, and it's been a pleasure to be involved.
Thank you.